I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 58 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. I am Dr. Carolyn Solo, PhD, LCSW, EMDR therapist, coffee drinker, and mom of 3 daughters. Thanks so much for joining me. So, my last episode was actually 2 weeks ago instead of my normal every week format, which I will talk about in more detail shortly. But it makes the topic of today's episode even more fitting. So today's episode is about the power of doing things imperfectly. So first, I'm going to talk about what's been imperfect for me recently. Just a little bit about the power of showing up imperfectly more generally, right? I'm sure we've all heard about like the gifts of imperfection. And even though we know it, we can still use a reminder. And why showing up imperfectly as an EMDR intensive therapist can actually be really powerful. So let's get started. So why did I not record last week? Well, those of you who have been listening for a while know that I am moving with my family from Pennsylvania to Vermont, and our move date was July 3rd, last Wednesday. Normally I record on Wednesdays. So we moved 7 hours away. Yep. Hair in my mouth. 4 states away from the only home my kids have ever known. We lived there for 7 years to Vermont. We're actually staying in an Airbnb now while we wait for all of our stuff to arrive. Because we used a moving company that takes them a week to get stuff to you. And remember, it's the 4th of July weekend. So we're still living out of suitcases. I really believed that I was going to actually record an episode. I really wanted to. I had the idea for this episode already, but there was just no way. I just had to accept that the imperfection of the week that just was. Like, I was trying to navigate one of the biggest changes in the lives of my kids, maybe other than a sibling being born, and there was just so many logistics, so much stress, so much going on. That was what I had to devote all of my energy to. And I was all, I wanted to believe I could do it. But there was just no way. And then I was going to have to be okay with it. And about like the day of the move, I just sort of accepted it. And I was like, yeah, this is not happening. And that's okay. It's not, I have been extremely consistent, which is one of the reasons why I felt okay missing a week. And the most important thing in my life is my family. And if I was spending all this time worrying about when I was going to record and feeling resentful and bitter because I wasn't getting a chance to record, that was really going to undermine, the most important thing in my life, which is my relationship with my kids and my husband. He needed me to be present too. So yeah, I just had to accept it, and that was it, right? Did it matter? Were there impacts? Kind of, I guess. I mean, I've been looking at my statistics over the past week, and I definitely had a dip in engagement on Instagram because I wasn't posting as much. And I had a dip in my podcast downloads for the week, which makes sense because 1, there wasn't a new episode. And 2, Wednesday and Thursday, the day that my podcast drops and the day after the episode drops, I get the highest number of downloads because I always post content about the podcast on my Instagram Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which, reminds people to download it. And people who just come across my content for the first time on one of those days might have never heard about the podcast, so they're going to go and download a bunch of episodes. Interestingly, my podcast downloads weren't terrible this week. They were lower than they normally would be on a Wednesday, Thursday, but not terrible. So that also is the power of like consistency, right? But so that happened. But, the plus side was that I didn't feel that pull of like, I should be doing this, but I need to be present for my family. And that pull often creates resentment in me. Like, oh, work is pulling me away from my family and my family is pulling me away from what I need to do for work. If I just said, nope, not happening. The episode's not happening this week. That's fine. I have the best possible reason for it. And like, I don't want to pretend to be superwoman, super mom, super person, right? Like, stuff happens in everyone's life. And just let's be real about that, right? We can't always do everything all the time. I'm not running a multi-million-dollar operation where I have lots of employees that can pick up the slack when I have other stuff going on. So yeah, that's just what it means to be a one-person business. I mean, to be fair, I have people who work for me, contractors who do some of my social media and email writing and stuff like that, and podcast editing, but for the most part, it's all me, right? So, and that's fine. That's how it's intended to be. But like, that does mean that not everything can flow as seamlessly as it would flow if it were a bigger organization, right? And that's fine. But like, I think that I have at this point built a business that can handle those very occasional blips, right? Like I didn't just like have no engagement. I did have a couple of email subscribers last week, which is always another indicator of progress. Like, did people subscribe to my email list? Had a couple of those, even though I wasn't talking about it, so, and I had the podcast downloads. Like, I did have someone reach out about a couple things that they were interested in. So like all of that still happened, not at the same rate as I would expect in a given week, but there's enough back catalog stuff and my presence is established enough that things are still getting out there and things are still happening. And my podcast episodes aren't always amazing every week, but they're consistent. That's another thing about imperfection, right? Like, it's not just about the perfection of getting one out, but the perfection or imperfection of actually doing the thing, right? Like, last week being an important exception, I didn't make the podcast. It just would not have worked. My head was not in it. But usually I do record the podcast, even if it isn't the best one I've ever recorded. Like, I have some episodes that I'm really proud of. Some they're like, they're all right. I think they're interesting still and worth listening to, but like maybe the takeaways aren't as, solid gold or whatever. But no one expects that. It's just like a TV show, right? Not every episode is the best episode of that show. But you're still glad those episodes are there. And the same, like, my Instagram presence isn't always amazing, but it's consistent, right? None of us can be brilliant every single day. And I think that when we expect that of ourselves, we get paralyzed. Okay. Another way that I'm showing up imperfectly today, right now, I lost my mic in the move and my headphones broke. So, and I haven't had time to replace them. So we shall see how this ends up sounding. But again, that wasn't going to stop me from getting something out that I had really committed to doing this week because it didn't happen last week. Something is better than nothing. Showing up imperfectly is better than showing up not at all. Even if this episode would be 10 minutes long, it's probably going to be a little longer, but not, it's not going to be a 45-minute chock full of tips episode, but something is better than nothing. And I'm giving myself grace because of this massive transition. And this is so important, I know that I care way more about any dips in audio quality than anyone else listening does, if they even notice at all, right? So just in general, that applies, right? Like, anything we're worried about, likely no one's thinking about us that much. Everyone's too busy thinking about themselves. It's like, if only my middle school self could have learned that a little bit sooner. But it's definitely true in the business world too, right? We do our best with what we have to offer every single week, and usually that's good enough for everybody else. And let's start making it closer to good enough for ourselves. So, like, what's the power of showing up imperfectly? Well, like I said, it makes us be consistent and just do the damn thing, right? If we're not afraid, like, oh, the audio quality isn't going to be good. Oh, my episode idea this week isn't as good as last week's. But I'm just like, it's good enough. You can apply that to so many areas of your life, right? And I think it challenges that perfectionism when we just show up and do the damn thing. No one else cares as much as we do, right? No one else is watching us as closely as we're watching ourselves. And mistakes are survivable. Things not being perfect are survivable. They don't derail us in the way that we tell ourselves, the narrative that we have for ourselves tells us it will. We all know, well, not all of us, but those of us who do, parts work or have any IFS training know that perfectionism is a protector part, right? It's a manager part. It's trying to protect us from failure. That's what that part of us believes it's doing, right? That part of us has amazing intentions. However, trying to prevent us from failure through perfectionism can often have the opposite effect, which is that it also prevents us from succeeding, right? And Brene Brown says, dare greatly. Like, we all know this, but it's still really hard. So it's a great opportunity when you feel that perfectionism getting stirred up in you to really take some time, sit back, give that part some attention, ask ask that part, like, what do you want me to know? What are you worried about? I know how much it matters that you're trying to protect me. And, I'm the grown up here. I honestly can handle this. That perfectionism part of us is probably kind of young, as most protector parts are. Because doing things perfectly as a young child did feel protective, right? Maybe it meant that we wouldn't get hit even. Maybe it meant that we did well in school and that gave us the praise that we needed from our family members. Whatever it was, perfectionism was helpful to a point, but now it doesn't serve us in so many ways. And I think these are awesome lessons for us to share with our clients too. And I think another thing about imperfection is that it makes it easier for us to do something imperfectly the next time when there's a barrier. We're like, oh yeah, that time that I recorded the podcast without my microphone and without my headphones, it didn't sound great, but it sounded okay. And people still listen to the episode. In a week from now, will I care? Probably not. I mean, that's a great exercise I use all the time. Like, okay, Carolyn, yourself a week from now. Will she care as much about whatever's going on as she cares about right now? How will I feel about this in 1 week? And I take some time to really let myself feel the weight of that question in my body. And usually I come to an answer that's like, oh yeah, by then I will have moved on to something else. This will just be a blip in the rearview mirror. And that's usually true. And so, protector parts just come in so quickly, managers or firefighters, to try to deal with the situation. The antidote, or not antidote, but the best way to kind of handle that is using some curiosity and compassion and time, slowing things down. Protector parts want us to rush in and have something fixed quickly, but often the solution is one that gets in our way, right? So time and curiosity and space and compassion, those are the antidote to perfectionism. And yeah, this applies in so many areas of life, like every area of life, right? So I'm getting a little bit more, I don't know, bigger picture than just intensives today, but I think all of us need these reminders. And again, self-compassion, right? We can have so much compassion for ourselves when we allow ourselves to do things imperfectly, when we even celebrate doing things imperfectly for ourselves. Give yourself a pat on the back, hey, that's great. You faced that fear of this not being great and you did it anyway. When I finish this episode, I'm going to tell myself, you got through it, even though it wasn't your best ever, even though, it's not going to have the 300 downloads that my most popular episode does. That's not really what it's about. In some ways, this episode is about me. It's about me pushing through that fear of fear of imperfection. Look, I'm not going to go back and fix what I just said, even though it was wrong. I'll just keep it in. That's why I don't over edit my episodes either. I want them to sound like me, and I want them to reflect this belief that things don't have to be perfect. And in fact, perfectionism is off-putting. Right. And so it teaches us self-compassion, and it gives us compassion for other people when we see them kind of doing something imperfectly and putting themselves out there, even though it might not be the quote perfect time. There is no perfect time for anything. We know that. I prefer when I'm on Instagram or listening to a podcast, seeing the messy people. And what messy actually means is just someone's actual life. That's what I want to see. I want to see someone who's struggling, who's doing their best in spite of all the things that they have going on. When I do my Instagram reels, I often show up messy. My house is messy. My hair is messy. Maybe I'm still wearing the clothes I slept in that I actually also wore the day before. I don't have makeup on. I'm drinking coffee always because that's how I get through life. I got my bags under my eyes, looking more and more like my mom every day. I just saw her, so I was like, wow, those bags under the eyes, they are genetic. But hey, it means I have the privilege of being 44 that I'm getting these bags, right? I don't like perfectly curated content creators. Some people do, and that's fine. And some people do for some things and not others. But at this phase of life that I'm in, I don't need people being perfect and making me feel less than to sell a skincare product or whatever. I'm trying to connect with my people, the people who relate to me. And I think that my audience wants imperfection and wants to feel seen and wants to know that they can do the things that I'm doing, even if they're not doing them perfectly, even if they don't have their whole lives together, because I sure don't. Okay. And I know I do a lot of stuff and people often say, how do you do it all? And honestly, the answer is I do it imperfectly, all of it. My dissertation, my parenting, my podcasts, my businesses. Like, I think I do things well, but I also know when to say, okay, that's good enough. And I don't have any more time for this time to move on. I hardly ever re-record a podcast episode or a reel. Once is enough. Like, unless it, didn't work for some reason, like I cut something off by accident or whatever. But I'd have to flub the episode really badly or the reel really badly to re-record it. This morning I recorded a reel where I knocked my glasses off my face by accident. And I just kept it in because I thought it was funny. I was like, I talk with my hands a lot and I kind of like, and my glasses are a little bit loose. Moved my hand, knocked my glasses off, kept it. I thought that's funny and people will relate to it. And guess what? They do. So, because it's me being me, and like, got food in my teeth. That's also me being me. So, what does this have to do with intensives? Well, I often find when I'm working with therapists that they're afraid to try an intensive offering because they think they might not know enough. They might not be experienced enough with EMDR. They might not have done enough training. They just want that. They have that one more training syndrome. Oh, once I do the training on, IFS informed EMDR, then I'll be ready to do intensives. Once I have some more interviews under my belt, then I'll do intensives. Once you name it. Once I do that specialty addictions training, then I'll do intensives. I think, yes, be competent, but don't use the idea of what competence could be as a barrier to moving forward with intensives. You could always do a 90-minute session and see how that feels. That's working intensively. Another thing I see with imperfection and intensive therapists is perfection about marketing. Perfectionism about marketing. That they won't do a good enough job, or they'll say the wrong thing, or they'll quote, look stupid, or they'll charge a fee and get called out for it. But just doing it helps you deal with the fear of those things happening. Like, first of all, some of those things might not ever happen, right? There's that. And second of all, sometimes they might. And then you kind of have the answer for your worst case scenario. And usually it's not, even like getting called out on Instagram is something that I've talked about before because it's happened to me. I think it's a fear of a lot of therapists who market on Instagram or any kind of social media marketing. It can happen, but social media is so noisy. That's just one blip in, a million, like billions and billions of people, right? That is not going to be the one thing that tanks your practice. So, and when you realize it's survivable, that intense rush of feelings or emotion or anger or fear or anxiety, whatever comes up when you get that response, it's distress tolerance, just like we teach our clients. You can ride the wave of that distress. Use your self-soothing skills, talk to the parts of you that are trying to protect you, and get to the other side. And you find out, oh, okay. And like a week from now, I won't even remember really what happened. And that's true. Okay. What if you, have a networking call with, say, a psychiatrist? I know a lot of therapists are fearful about talking to MDs, like whether it's psychiatrists or other kinds of doctors. We feel less than, we feel like they're, quote, real medical professionals and we're not, whatever. And so you feel nervous in that conversation. And what if you say something that's wrong and you kind of flub it a bit? Okay, you did. Maybe that person will write you off. Maybe they'll be like, that person's an idiot. Carolyn's an idiot. I'm obviously never going to call her. But maybe not. Maybe they'll just not even notice, or they'll be like, well, she's human, just like I am, and makes mistakes. Psychiatrists aren't smarter than we are. They just do a different thing than we do. Their training has looked very different. And, they can practice medicine. We can't, but we're not trying to practice physical medicine, We do different things. They're also not trying to practice EMDR therapy. So, but whether or not that person, that psychiatrist, like writes you off or doesn't, neither one will think you forever. And you'll have that experience in your back pocket to remind you that you can get through things not going perfectly. Then, of course, there's the fear about, what if I harm a client because I'm not good enough at this yet? And that is so honorable and it's valid. And I appreciate the integrity of clinicians who worry about this. All that says to me is that you're probably not going to harm anyone because you care so much about doing good work. And we can't possibly prepare ourselves for every single scenario that comes up, right? Like, not every single person in the world is going to benefit hugely from our our therapy, and there may be clients who are dissatisfied, but there's no amount of like preparation that can really keep that from happening anyway. And it's going to happen a lot less than the alternative will, which is that you will be helpful to clients. And keeping yourselves from offering a service like intensives that could be so incredibly healing because of that fear, I think that's a way of harming clients, right? You're harming them by not offering something that could help them so much. Don't let that fear stop you from doing something that all the research shows and dictates is incredibly healing and that clients want it. So I think there's also that fear of, perfection in the sense of if I quote a high fee, I'll lose clients or they'll be upset with me. Again, I say, like, this is a service that people want. Don't hold back from saying it because you have this fear of saying it wrong and then upsetting someone and then having a difficult interaction. And if you do have a difficult interaction, that's survivable too. And it's not about you specifically. Like, all of us who are premium fee therapists have had uncomfortable conversations with clients about fees. And we've gotten through them and we'll get through the next one. And over time, we develop comfort with just like, if it doesn't work for them, that's okay. And it's not a reflection on us. But every person that you work with deserves to know that you offer this service, and then they get to decide if it works for them. Don't let that fear hold you back from offering something to someone. Don't you take the position of saying, I know what that person can or cannot do. That's up to them, not up to us. Okay. However, these concerns are all valid and you deserve support, and it's okay to want more skills and it's okay to want feedback. Like, I started working intensively and then I still did 3 different intensive programs. And all of them made me better for different reasons. Okay. So even with all the knowledge in the world, we still need support. We need support with implementation. We need to feel grounded clinically with a group of peers who really get it. We need to have a place to go to ask those really tough questions. And that's, I think, responsible of us as clinicians to do that. We can always improve what we do, no matter how much we know and how long we've been doing it, right? Like, there's always new perspectives. Why did I do 3 different intensive courses? Because I learned different things from each one. So this is one of the many things I love about this group offering, this group that I'm starting in September, is that there is the clinical piece, the teaching stuff, there's the marketing piece, there's the business side, there's the like, I read your content and give you feedback on your web copy, on any emails we send, on all that stuff. There's clinical support and there's the peer support that's built in. You get built-in accountability and support for all of those questions you have. You get to see other people, quote, being imperfect in real time. And we all will support and help each other. I'm actually kind of in it with you right now too, because as I've just moved, I'm rebuilding my intensives practice because I left the state where I had all my connections. And guess what? I'm not scared because I know it can be done. But it'll be a fun process, I think, for us all to kind of be in it together. I'll be telling you guys about the things that went well and the things that didn't go well this week, right? So yes, imperfection is not something to be afraid of, and it's good to want support. We cannot work in a vacuum, and it's incredibly difficult work we do. But this group, I think, will improve your offering in so many ways. It'll improve it clinically with all the skills you learn. It'll improve your finances because you'll get comfortable offering a fee that works for you, and you'll get comfortable with a schedule that actually supports your needs. You'll get a lot more confidence in what you're offering. You'll improve your reach and, the number of intensives you book. All those things are going to improve. So yes, absolutely. Go in there and start offering some intensive work to people and know that you can still be better. And we should all want to be better clinicians, right? I think a lot of times these coaching programs are fixated on let's make money. And that's so important and valid. And I would never tell anyone that that's not important. But what I love about my program is you also become a better clinician. Not only will your marketing get better, but you'll be a better therapist. And guess what? The number one marketing tool for any therapist is being a good therapist. So the better you are, the easier it will be to get those referrals rolling in. It's the whole package. And I'm super excited for you to join me. So, there's lots of ways to reach out to me to find out more about that. I'm also going to continue to talk about it on future episodes to get all the details. But I'm very excited about it if you can't tell. And my kids will be back in school then, so I'll have more time. I'm not going to be doing that imperfectly. I mean, to be fair, I'm sure I'm going to screw some stuff up. This is the first time I'm offering the group program, but I'm committed to doing it imperfectly. And actually, I'm pretty sure it's going to be good. So it'll be a work in progress for all of us. And that's part of the fun of it, right? We're all going to be workshopping together. So today was about the gift of imperfection, what it can look like and how it can benefit us, and how to not let that fear of imperfection get in your way as an intensive therapist. You can always be in touch with me on Instagram at Future Template Parent. My website, www.futuretemplateparent.com, is where all the details on my offerings are. I'm so excited for next week's episode, which I will not miss because that's scheduled with a guest, so it's going to happen. I'm going to be interviewing my business coach, the one and only Kelly McKenna, Business of Therapy. Some of you would know her, or Sit with Kelly. Those are her Instagram accounts. And we'll be talking all things business coaching, specifically about how my work with her has taken my practice and my coaching business far beyond what I could do myself. It's kind of about, yes, I was doing things imperfectly and making progress, but having an expert on my side moved me so much further along in so much less time, right? It was like, for so many reasons, accountability, her knowledge of resources, like don't make the same mistakes I did, her connections, all those things. So I'm really excited for that interview. I think you guys will love it. Do not miss it. Have a wonderful week, everyone. I am signing off for the first time from here in Vermont, where I will be probably recording from for the foreseeable future. I mean, yes, I will be. It's just that I know that one week I'm going to be in Maine, so I'll probably record in Maine. But anyway, have a wonderful week. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for all of your support, and let's get out there and be imperfect together. Take care, everybody.